through canvas like hunger. I stood in the garage watching 5 years of work dissolve into nothing while my sister Andrea held the empty bottle of drain cleaner like a trophy. "Oops," she said, not even trying to hide her smile. "Guess you'll have to cancel that interview." The fumes burned my eyes, but not as much as seeing my paintings melt. 43 pieces, every technique I'd mastered, every late night, every rejected meal because I was wasting time on doodles. The portrait of our grandmother that had taken 6 months. The landscape series that got me noticed by the Whitmore Gallery. The abstract collection I bled for. Literally, I'd mix my own blood into the reds after a particularly vicious family intervention about my delusions. All of it bubbling into toxic soup on the concrete floor. "Talent skips generations like you," Dad said from the doorway, arms crossed like he was watching justice being served. "This saves everyone the embarrassment of watching you fail publicly." "Better to fail now than embarrass us later," Mom added, stepping carefully around the spreading puddle of dissolved dreams. "The Whitmore Gallery, really, Grace? Did you think it wouldn't Google our family? Find out that your art comes from the same gene pool as your brother's addiction issues. My brother Tyler, dead 3 years from an overdose, still blamed for everything wrong in our family, even though he'd been the only one who'd ever supported my art. He bought my first real canvas with money he should have spent on groceries. Now they used his memory as a weapon against me." Andrea's starting her internship at the firm next week. Dad continued. "Real career, real future. We can't have you pulling focus with your finger painting nonsense." Andrea preened, tossing the empty acid bottle in the trash like it was just another piece of garbage. At 24, she'd never created anything but chaos. But she had the right look, the right smile, the right ability to mirror our parents' cruelty and call it ambition. "You're welcome," she said to me. "I saved you from humiliation. That gallery would have laughed you out of the room." I knelt beside the remains of my portfolio, touching the edge of what used to be my self-portrait. The acid hadn't reached all of it. One eye remained, staring up at me from the wreckage. Accusing. Asking why I hadn't protected it better. "Clean this up," Mom ordered. "And call the gallery. Tell them you've reconsidered. That you've decided to pursue something more appropriate for someone of your limitations." My limitations? I finally spoke, my voice steadier than I felt. "Don't play dumb," Andrea laughed. "The weird sister who talks to paintings, who thinks colors have feelings, who spent her college fund on art supplies. You're basically Tyler with a paintbrush instead of a needle." That's when I smiled. Not the broken smile they expected, not the defeated smile they'd seen 100 times before, but the smile of someone who'd just realized the cage door had been open all along. "You're right," I said, standing up. "I am like Tyler." They shifted uncomfortably. Mentions of Tyler that weren't accusations usually meant trouble. He saw the truth about this family. He just didn't know how to survive it. But I do. "Don't be dramatic," Mom started, but I cut her off. "Andrea, remember when you plagiarized your entire senior thesis? When you paid Kevin Martinez to write it for you? I have the receipts, the Venmo transactions, the text messages where you brag about fooling your professors." Her face went white. "You're lying." "Mom, remember when you had that affair with Dad's business partner? The one that ended when his wife found out? I have the emails. The hotel receipts you hid in my art supply box because you thought I'd never clean it out. How dare you? Dad, remember the client money you borrowed to cover Andrea's sorority debts? The $50,000 that's still missing from the accounts. I have the bank statements, the forged signatures, the trail that leads right back to you." The garage fell silent except for the hissing of acid on concrete. "You think I spent 5 years just painting?" I asked. "Tyler taught me something before he died. He said the only way to survive this family was to have insurance. He just never got to use his." "You're bluffing," Andrea said, but her voice shook. I pulled out my phone, showing them the cloud folder labeled Family Archives. Subfolders for each of them, years of documentation. "The Whitmore Gallery interview is at 2 tomorrow, I said calmly. "I'll make it, because while you were destroying the portfolio you knew about, the real one was already there. Has been for a week. 50 pieces, my best work, including a series called Generational Trauma that I think you'd find familiar." "You didn't," Mom gasped. "Family portraits," I confirmed. "Abstract, of course, but anyone who knows us would recognize the subjects. The mother drowning in wine glasses, the father counting money while his family burns, the golden daughter with her hollow crown, and the erased son, the ghost in every frame. That's our private. Nothing in this family is private, I interrupted. You made sure of that. Every failure broadcasted, every mistake cataloged, every weakness exploited. I just painted what I saw. We'll sue, Dad threatened. Defamation, theft of private information. With what money? The funds you embezzled? And sue me for what? Painting the truth. Besides, I thought talent skipped generations like me. What could I possibly create that would matter enough to sue over? Andrea lunged for my phone, but I stepped back, letting her slip in the acid puddle. She went down hard, shrieking as the diluted chemicals ate through her designer jeans. Careful, I said. That's evidence of destruction of property you're rolling in. Worth about $30,000, according to my insurance documentation. Yes, I insured my work. Yes, I have photos of everything before you destroyed it. Yes, the security cameras in the garage caught everything. I pointed to the camera they'd installed to make sure I wasn't stealing supplies from the garage. The one they'd forgotten about because watching me had become boring once I'd stopped fighting back. You planned this, Mom said, the truth dawning on her wine-flushed face. I prepared for this, I corrected. There's a difference. I hoped you'd surprise me. That maybe one of you would see my work and feel something other than threatened. But I knew better. Tyler knew better. He just loved you too much to use what he knew. Tyler was weak, Dad spat. Tyler was kind, I said. And you killed that kindness day by day until he had to numb himself to survive it. But I'm not Tyler. I'm not kind. I'm an artist. And artists don't just observe, we transform. I headed for the door, stepping carefully around the acid puddle where my old life dissolved. The interview's at 2. The opening, if they accept me, will be next month. You're not invited, but you'll hear about it. Everyone will. We'll destroy you, Andrea screamed, still trying to get the acid off her pants. We'll tell everyone you're crazy, that you're a liar. That I'm what? An artist who painted her truth? A daughter who documented her abuse? A sister who survived what her brother couldn't? Go ahead. Add to the series. I'll call it Extinction Burst, the final desperate thrashing of predators who've lost their prey. I left them in the garage with the fumes and the fury, packed my single suitcase, the one I'd kept ready for months. Everything important was already at the studio space I'd rented under a fake name, paid for with commissions they didn't know about. The Whitmore interview went better than I dreamed. Margaret Whitmore herself sat in, drawn by the portfolio I'd submitted. The generational trauma series made her assistant cry. The portrait of Tyler, painted from memory and grief, sold before I even officially joined the gallery. Your work has teeth, Margaret said. It doesn't just show pain, it transforms it. That's rare. I had good teachers, I said. They taught me that talent skips generations. They were right, it skipped their generation entirely. The opening was a month later. By then, the local news had picked up the story. Not because I'd shared it, but because Andrea, in her infinite wisdom, had posted about destroying my art on Instagram, teaching my delusional sister a lesson about reality. The reality was 300 people at my opening, red dots on every piece within an hour. A write-up in Art Forum that called the work devastating and necessary. Commission requests from collectors who saw their own broken families in my broken canvases. My family tried to come. Security turned them away with printed copies of the restraining order I'd filed after they tried to break into my studio. They stood on the sidewalk, watching through the windows as strangers bought pain they'd inflicted, transformed into something they could never understand or claim. The piece that hurt them most wasn't the portraits. It was the one I painted the night they destroyed my portfolio. Phoenix in Acid. A self-portrait rising from a pool of dissolved canvas, every dissolved painting they destroyed visible in the wings. The catalog description read, "Sometimes destruction is just transformation wearing a disguise." It sold for more than Andrea's starting salary. The buyer? A collector whose own family had tried to destroy her dreams. She hung it in the lobby of her company, a tech firm worth billions, with a plaque, "For everyone who was told their talent skipped them." My family's response was predictable. Dad's embezzlement caught up with him when a forensic accountant hired by his firm after my story went viral found more missing funds. Andrea's plagiarism came out when Kevin Martinez, inspired by my courage, posted the receipts himself. Mom's affair reignited when the wife of her former lover recognized herself in one of my paintings and demanded answers. They fell like dominoes, each crash triggering the next. No dramatic confrontation needed. Just the natural consequence of their own actions, painted in acrylic and hung on gallery walls. I donated half the proceeds from that first show to addiction services in Tyler's name. The other half bought me a real studio, a real future, a real life where talent didn't skip me. It claimed me, filled me, saved me. 2 years later, I was preparing for my first museum show when a letter arrived. Andrea's handwriting, shaky and desperate. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Dad's in prison. Mom's in rehab. I lost everything. Please, we're family. Help us. I painted my response. Family portrait number 47, the empty frame. A massive canvas, entirely white except for the faint outline of figures that might have been there once. The museum hung it at the entrance with my artist's statement. Some erasures are acts of violence. Others are acts of grace. This is both. They were right that night in the garage. I didn't embarrass them later. I erased them completely. From my life, from my art, from my future. They exist now only as cautionary tales, dissolved in the acid of their own cruelty, while I rise from the chemicals they poured on my dreams. Talent skips generations. No, talent survives generations. It just sometimes has to paint its way out of the bloodline that tries to bury it. And somewhere, Tyler is painting too, finally free of the family that killed him for daring to feel too much in a house that felt too little. His portrait hangs in my living room, not the broken boy they remember, but the artist he could have been if acid hadn't come in the form of words before it came in bottles. I paint for him, for me, for everyone whose talent was called a skip when it was really a leap, away from those who'd rather destroy than celebrate the gifts they couldn't understand. The acid ate through canvas, but it couldn't touch what really mattered. The vision that saw beauty in the ruins, art in the ashes, and freedom in the flames. They threw acid on my art. I turned their acid into alchemy. They said talent skipped generations like me. They were wrong. Cruelty skipped generations. It just took me leaving to prove it.